everyone again, it's Dr. Rahman here with Nikesh Patel, and in this video he's going to give you tips on how to study for animal science classes, or really classes in general. So Nikesh, what is your best study life hack you have?
I would say writing everything out. So I know that lots of professors, they upload PowerPoints and they say read the textbook, and so everyone has a different recommendation, but what's worked for me, especially with science-based courses where there is a lot of memorization involved, writing stuff out helps me remember the material better.
Yep.
So I think that when I'm, ready to take an exam or write an essay or whatever it is, I am actually able to think back to how I wrote it, where I wrote it, that sort of thing. And studying it in detail like that, believe it or not, you actually do remember it, during the exam. So I think it works for me. I can't guarantee that it's going to work for everyone, but it's worked for me so far, and I think that it's definitely a good thing to try.
Yeah, do you write things out once, or do you write things out, like for one lecture, let's say? Would you write out that lecture once, or would you, over the span of some time, write that lecture several times to study?
That's a good question. I actually write them out multiple times.
Okay.
And I actually organize it as well so that I kind of have an idea of, I can categorize it and compartmentalize it in my head.
Yes.
So I know that, so that's not so overwhelming, because it still is a lot of material. If I can organize it and kind of outline it maybe, then it helps me refer to a certain section of what I had written previously.
Perfect. So for an exam, when do you usually start studying for that exam?
Great question. Depends on the amount of material and how comfortable you are with that material.
Okay.
So if it's something that kind of comes naturally to me, then I tend to hold off until closer to the exam period, because I know that I kind of retained more from the lectures, and then kind of have more background knowledge. So I'm more comfortable with it.
Okay.
And so for that reason, I'm more comfortable with waiting a little bit longer to start studying.
Right.
If it's something that's different to me, that's kind of out of my comfort zone, then I definitely recommend starting earlier, because the worst thing you can do is wait until the night before.
Yes.
And then, you have a million questions, and it's, 2 a.m. before your exam, and then there's no one on Sakai, so you can't chat with anyone, you can't email your professor, so you're kind of kicking yourself at that point, because you're losing out on a lot of resources that you would have been able to use if you had started studying maybe 2 weeks earlier.
Yeah, so do you find you use Sakai often to ask questions?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that the chat actually really helps, because if you have a question and you're kind of stumped on something that might have not been so clear in a lecture that your professor had posted, chances are there's going to be another student who probably may have had that same question and may have been able to figure it out. Okay. So I don't go on and always ask questions, but sometimes helping, it also helps to just read through it. Okay. So other people might ask questions that you might not have thought about, and then other students might have answered them. So it's kind of like a quick review type of thing too.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah. Oh, I like that. Yeah, because a lot of classes use Sakai, so that sounds like a really great resource where you can go to that chat room periodically, even if you don't have an exam, and see what other people are thinking about.
Exactly.
Oh, that's great. So how do you study? Besides writing, are there any other little tips you have?
Yes. So generally with resources, if a professor recommends to get a textbook, I think it's always a good idea to get a textbook. Okay. I think it's a good idea just to have it on hand. It doesn't mean that you're going to be, I don't read every chapter, every page from cover to cover. I don't do that. But if I get to a point in the lecture where I don't get it, and sometimes diagrams in the book might help, or just reading it in plain text in the book might help. So I kind of use it as a reference. I'm not using it as my main course or my main way of studying, but I use it as a reference point when I get to a point in the lecture notes that I don't understand. Okay. So using the book helps, I think, if there is a book offered for the class. Using the PowerPoints, I think, is obviously really great, because it's a great way of summarizing all of the information. Writing it out helps. And if I have a question that I still can't, I can't find it in the book, I can't find it in the lecture notes or anything like that, then Google. There are other universities and other professors who also post stuff online, and sometimes they have other, illustrations and things that might help as well. Right. So definitely using the internet is a good idea, because using it can definitely answer some questions for you.
Exactly. No, definitely. Google you can use for everything.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it is. So now, big question. Do you study with friends? Do you prefer to study on your own, or do you kind of do a mix of both?
I do a mix of both. It depends on where I'm at with respect to studying for that particular exam or studying for that class. I start off by studying by myself, just because I can't study with someone else unless I know that I know the information on my own.
Right.
So I've tried it before. I've tried just studying with friends, and then I realized that I'm not getting through all of the material, and I'm not comfortable when I end up having to take the exam.
Okay.
And so I find that what works for me is I sit down and I study all of the material on my own.
Okay.
Just by myself. And then when I know it well enough, then I meet up with friends. And I also recommend to them, go over the material yourself as well, and then we can quiz each other.
That's great.
If you have a question or something and you get to a point where you don't understand something, then's the time to kind of get through it. But I mean, if you get stuck on something and then you start interacting with your friends, then you might not be able to finish finish the material that you had anticipated.
Of course.
You were going to finish. So I definitely think that getting through at least once on your own is great, and that way you kind of have seen it at least once, and then practicing it and kind of memorizing it, well, not memorizing it, but remembering it without having to look at your notes, and just kind of interacting with your friends after you look at it helps.
Perfect. Well, I think those are excellent tips for anyone here in the animal science department looking to study for classes. So thank you, Nikesh, again for studying, for sharing those tips with us.
No problem.